came round, I was heading for a small disaster before you came.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I wanted to take a quick second to say a huge welcome to all of my new subscribers. I have been gaining like wildfire lately. It's blowing my mind, so I just wanted to say hello and welcome. This is one of those cases that never really got the attention that it needed, and it's one of the very sad cases where it eventually just kind of fizzled out in the media when it really out of all the cases needed to be kept alive, and that is the case of Elizabeth Salgado. So Elizabeth was a 26-year-old girl that was living in Chiapas, Mexico. She had just come back from a trip with her church. Her family were all devout Mormons, and she had this really strong calling to study English and spread the gospel. So on March 23rd, she actually moved to Provo, Utah. She had just received a scholarship to the Nomen Global Language Center, and she was so incredibly excited to start this new part in her life. She had already gone to school for engineering, but this was really calling to her and her family, and she thought this was something that she really had to do. And to her, this was huge. She was moving from Mexico to the United States, and she would meet new people, learn new things, and this was essentially a huge turning point in her life. So Elizabeth was only in Provo for 3 weeks before she disappeared, and in this time span, she created a very good routine. She went to school in the morning, she walked the exact same way home, she called her sister or texted her sister every single day once she had left school. She usually studied by herself, then went to the gym by herself, and kept up this routine the entire time that she was there. Back when she was at home, she was never really a very sociable person to begin with. She was very active on all forms of social media, but when it came to like face-to-face interactions, she was never that kind of person. She was not necessarily shy per se, but she just was reserved, I guess is the better way to say it. So when her friends back at home would ask her to go out to dances or do this or that or parties, she always was the one who's like, no thanks, I'd rather stay home. She also had started a job as a waitress in a local Mexican restaurant and was extremely excited about it. So she, at this point, was on this high in her life. She had come to a different country, she was learning a new language, she was going to be able to spread the gospel, and she had already gotten a new job. So she was like on cloud 9. And then came the day of April 16th, 2015, where she quite literally vanished into thin air.
We're very worried about her, that she's in a dangerous situation. We can't sleep, we can't eat, we can't keep going with our lives.
She had left her class around 1:30 p.m. started her about 1.5 mile walk home, and she texted her sister like she normally did, was like, hey, I'm going home. And then afterwards she also texted her uncle, who lived the closest to her, Rudenberg, and she told him that she would love for him to take her to the store later around 5 p.m. So from this, you get the idea that she had full intentions of continuing her day as it was. But unfortunately, that did not happen. She'd been heading northbound on 400 West, and I've even looked at a map of this, and the school's kind of like on a corner, and she was walking up this way, and there are only a couple blocks on that street, and she only had about 1.5 miles to walk, so it's a pretty straightforward walk. It's nothing too crazy, and it's also a very populated street. Since then, there's not been a single shred of Elizabeth anywhere. It is almost exactly like she dropped off the face of the earth. Her cell phone from that moment on had no more activity on it. Her credit cards had no activity on it. Her social media had no activity on it. Her email had no activity on it. Every single thing about this girl's life just stopped. Her other uncle named Rosenberg lived in California, and Rudenberg called him and was like, hey, I was supposed to pick her up to take her to the store. She's not answering. I've texted her multiple times. I've called her multiple times. I can't reach her. There's got to be something wrong. And what you guys need to keep in mind is that this girl was not in a place she was familiar with. And it's not like she just went to a new city. She went to a new country. So for someone to just stop responding and kind of go missing in that sort of situation, it normally never points towards them leaving on their own. They also knew that she was not the person to stray out of routine, and she literally stuck to things like clockwork, and so red flags immediately were raised, and they decided to call the police department. So the police department did a very thorough investigation, because once again, this girl is not even from the United States. She was from Mexico, and this was a scary situation. They checked her roommates, the students from the school, the teachers. She hadn't even really been there long enough and didn't really have many acquaintances other than people who she just was involved with at school. And this is what leads them to their very first tip. Rosenberg remembered that he had a conversation with Elizabeth where she told him that there was this boy who was very, very interested in her. And she said that it made her extremely uncomfortable, that he was not getting the clue, that he needed to back off, that he literally asked her on a daily basis, like, will you go out with me? Will you go out with me? I want to date you. I'm interested in you. And she always had to tell him no. And I guess she felt alarmed enough to inform her uncle about this because she felt very uncomfortable. So they immediately went to find this guy. They found him, they questioned him, and that one tip that they had, the only thing that they had at the moment, immediately evaporated because he was almost automatically ruled out afterwards. They started search parties. They walked up and down the stretch of road where she had last been seen, and they were looking for absolutely everything. They were looking for any stitch of clothing they could find. They were looking for signs of any of her belongings possibly being thrown to the side.
Following her disappearance, her family, friends, and volunteers conducted searches, knocked on doors, hung posters everywhere, and organized community marches to keep her face in front of the public.
And they found absolutely nothing. And this is why this case is so difficult. There is nothing. There's literally nothing to it.
Despite all this, along with a $50,000 reward from the Provo Police Department, no solid leads have materialized.
Elizabeth Smart, which is a name that I'm sure you guys are very familiar with if you're on my channel, was a girl who went missing in Salt Lake City, Utah years ago, and she was, I think, about 13 or 14 years old, and she was returned home safely. Her and her father decided to get involved in the investigation and really help this case get the media's eye because, once again, this girl's not from the United States. She only has two family members here, two uncles, only one of which lived near her at the time, to really keep this case going. Her parents still lived in Mexico and they didn't speak any English, so really was not much that they could do at the moment. Elizabeth and her father helped out the uncles. They held conferences, they, interviewed with media, they did as much as they possibly can. They basically reached out to all of their old resources to really get this circulating. And what her father said, which is something that I repeat all the time, is that you just don't know, and the best thing you can do is keep the story alive. And he even said if we hadn't done that with Elizabeth's case, we never would have found her. And lo and behold, I think it was about 8 or 9 months later, she turned back up. So they were really trying to help this family in their search efforts, yet somehow it still just turned up with absolutely nothing. They had no leads in it. The few that they did have all led to nothing and dried up very, very quickly, and so everything fizzled out. This is where the theories start to get involved, and I know usually my cases have a lot more information. It's almost why this case gets to me so bad. When there's no information, people like to come up with some pretty incriminating theories when it comes to the family usually. And when I was researching this, I did not expect to stumble across some of the theories that I came across, and I'm just going to relay them to you now. Keep in mind, this is not my personal opinion. These are theories and things that I've gathered from other people who have been interviewed. A ton of people in the community where her uncle Rudenberg lived helped in the search efforts. They donated a lot of money. They provided housing. They flew the parents out, I think 1 or 2 times.
A former volunteer who did not want to be identified told me that the family has also received donations of cash, housing, travel, meals, and flyers. While admitting he doesn't know what happened, Ruiz wonders about Rosenberg and Rudenberg Salgado.
I could not get a definitive answer on that. A lot of this information was in Spanish.
There's just so many things that just don't make sense, that it almost makes you feel like, is it possible that she went with somebody she trusted?
There were apparently a lot of inconsistencies in both of their stories, and even they themselves would change up their stories along the way. And the thing that makes this stand out to me the most is the fact that there's not much of a story here. There's very definitive facts that she had been at school, texted her sister, texted her uncle, and started to walk home. But other than that, there are really no other facts. So I find it interesting that their facts changed when there weren't much to begin with. It's almost as if maybe they had been creating a story, and once again, this is just theories that I found. A lot of the people started accusing them of being more concerned about raising the money than actually finding Elizabeth.
There were a couple of instances where people would approach us saying, well, the family is claiming that nobody's helping them. I started to feel like there was some kind of a victimism going on.
Uncle uncles and some of the family back home all apparently had been to their own Facebook pages and own areas of social media claiming that they were getting no help from anyone. Yet there were all these different GoFundMe pages set up, there were donations given to them, they were, brought here, their plane tickets were bought, they were given a ton, and people did not really like the fact that despite everything that they had been given, that they said they were not being helped. Granted, keep in mind that they were only getting so much help, if that makes sense. As Latinos, and since there was so little family in the United States, they relied on very few people who were familiar with them and comfortable enough with them to help fund this search. So a lot of places that normally would fund someone who, let's just say, went missing in the United States, from the United States, who is maybe from a wealthier family or a more well-known family in the community, they would naturally get more money donated to them. So that was the parents and the family's kind of reaction to all of these theories being thrown out at them, is that, yes, we are getting help, maybe we worded it wrong, but we aren't getting the help that we need. We still need more, we don't have enough. And you also have to keep in mind that her parents did not speak English, so anything that was happening in the United States kind of had to be transferred over by the uncles. And that ended up putting the uncles in the spotlight yet again. After all of the accusations against the uncles that they wanted the money and they possibly had something to do with it, they came out with a very angry interview, which is totally understandable. If you are upset that your family member is missing and all of a sudden the spotlight's pointed at you, I totally understand why someone would be upset. But according to some people, they said some very strange things in this interview. They said pretty matter-of-factly that Elizabeth would be back soon and she would be able to clear the air. And while some people see this as them just being hopeful, other people see it as them being a little bit too sure about it, and so they never managed to get out from underneath the microscope. And then the police themselves started excluding the uncles. They had a family briefing every single week where they told everyone what they had found, their new leads, their new theories, and the brothers actually ended up being kicked out of it. The police themselves said a statement that they also were having some inconsistencies in the story. And I don't know exactly how this works. I feel like there's inconsistencies in every single case. So for family members to be kicked out of these briefings for the family, I really wonder what exactly was going on during those meetings that brought up all these inconsistencies and how serious these inconsistencies were. I don't know. I find that very, very interesting, and I could not find much on it. So if you find anything, let me know. I also know that they were put under lie detector tests. I know that one of them, it's been said that they have passed it. The other one, I have not heard anything on, and one place that I went to even said the police fully refused to give out the information. So I could not really find a great solid answer on that, but I do know for a fact that they were put under a lie detector test because of all of the inconsistencies. There were lots of things being thrown around. The family was accused of talking to people in Mexico or their different social media sites, like I said before, and saying that they were paying for things out of pocket and everything was being paid out of pocket by them. And then they would have someone come at them and attack them with other information saying that, hey, this person said that they funded this for you and they bought you this and they bought you that. And I honestly don't know what to chalk this up to other than a language barrier. And it is highly possible that the family maybe was lying, or that, whoever was donating thought they were donating to one thing, but they were donating to another. But that's why this case, once again, is so terrible, is that there's such a huge language barrier. Despite there being people to translate, family being over in the United States and family being over in Mexico, there still seems to be this huge just line of divide where proper information was not being transferred correctly. So that is the largest theory surrounding this case, is that the entire family was just in on it trying to get money, that they maybe had her picked up, knew that she texted her sister every single day to tell her that she was on her way home from school. They knew her routine. She was in such a routine that it would be very, very easy to plan something to take her. However, that's not the only theory. Family is not the only group of people who could have done that. That leads us into the sex trafficking theory, which is very, very highly possible. She was a girl who was learning how to speak English, was not fluent in it in any means. She had no one with her. She was a beautiful, beautiful woman, and someone easily could have watched her. And you could easily see her set routine, her school in the morning, her walk home, the same exact walk home every single day. She always sent that text message. You know, someone would know immediately where they could take her. However, my only issue with this theory is that it was in broad daylight. It was at 1:30 p.m. It was a very busy street. So her being so shy and her being so reserved, that leads me to think that whatever happened to her, if she was taken on that road, she was taken by somebody she trusted. A lot of people have said that she had absolutely no friends yet at the school. She did not know anyone well enough, and because of how reserved and shy she was, she would not have gotten in the car with someone who was at the school. However, that's another possibility. Maybe someone drove by who had bad intentions that she went to school with, and they trusted her just enough to give her a ride home, and they sold her into sex trafficking, or they just kidnapped her and killed her. There's really absolutely no telling. And with cases like this, it's almost like you can have these endless speculations on what you think happened, but it's so hard to find a definitive answer. And that is why it is so important that this case keep circulating and stay alive, because without possible tips from people, this case is literally absolutely nothing. I watched an interview on the police officer who did a lot of the investigating, and you know, you could see the pain in his eyes when he said that he had nothing else. There were no other leads. There were no other tips. There was nothing. Like literally, there is so little to this case that it just got sucked dry of its life almost instantly.
This has been the hardest thing in our lives. Having a family member missing, it's the worst thing that can happen to a family. Not knowing where she's at, what's happening to her.
Family is extremely upset, and all of their interviews, they were absolutely heartbroken. They were so close with her.
When the days are beautiful outside, we don't see them beautiful because the person that makes them beautiful is still missing.
I mean, she contacted her family in Mexico once, if not multiple times a day. She missed them terribly. She missed everyone, you know. She had very little family surrounding her, and I know I've repeated that over and over again, but just put yourself in that position to where you are in a place, a different country, and you only have one or two other people in that country that have your back. You haven't even made friends yet. That's why I find it so crazy, because no one heard her, no one saw her, no one saw anything. So did she get in the car with somebody that she trusted? Did she just decide to run off somewhere? I don't find that very likely. She just did not have the personality for that. The family is begging anyone in the community to come out with whatever answers they have, and at this point they're very scared that the people who might have possibly known might be holding back. And it's really, really sad, and it's really heartbreaking, because they're scared that the Latino community that she was surrounded by, or someone who knows something, could be scared to come forward because of their own citizenship, which is heartbreaking. And that is what they think is going on right now. That's why they think they've received absolutely no tips. They've received no information. Nothing new is coming of this, because whoever does know something could be so scared of their own place in this country that they do not want to come forward. Do you think that her family had something to do with it? Do you think that maybe her uncles, or one of her uncles, the one that lived closest to her, had, you know, some great idea for a money scheme? Do you think that if he did, that the rest of the family even was aware of it? Do you think one of them has some crazy story to hide? Or do you think that she was just abducted by some random stranger out of pure coincidence and luck for that person? Nobody saw it happen. You know, she hadn't returned to her apartment. She hadn't returned to any of her belongings there. She literally just vanished. Maybe someone from her school had something to do with it. I mean, the only person that really stood out to me, and I guess to her, was this guy that really liked her, but he was immediately dismissed, and she didn't have any other really close friends there. So would she have trusted one of them enough to get in the car with them? I don't know. This one has been just like rolling around in my brain for a while now, and I cannot for the life of me figure out what I think about it. There's just so little information. There's nothing known and nothing left behind to even figure out what happened to this poor girl, and her family is just suffering. every single day trying to get answers and trying to find her. I don't know, guys, let me know what you think down below. You guys are some serious investigators and I love hearing what your theories are. If any of you guys speak Spanish and want to go over to any of the different interviews I couldn't watch because I don't speak Spanish and let me know what happens, that would be awesome. That's actually how I found out a lot more information about Laura's Matank last week, is a bunch of you guys went and saw the different news outlets and different articles that were in German and told me what happened down below, and I was blown away by a lot of the information that somehow never got translated to English because it seemed very important. So if you guys are interested, go watch. There are a ton of interviews and I would love to hear what you have to say. So don't forget to leave me a comment down below. Don't forget to check me out on all of my social media platforms. I talk to you guys all the time on there. Give this video a huge thumbs up because the more times this video is seen, the more awareness it's going to raise to this case, and this case has just gone completely cold. So they need some sort of reignition and some sort of pump to their investigation again. You know, you guys, you never know who could see this video. Don't know if someone that's maybe terrified to come forward and see this video and feel the need after watching it to say something. You just don't know, and I will always say that. That's always gonna be my biggest motto on this channel, is you just don't know, and spreading awareness and talking about it is the best thing that you can do at this point in this sort of case. So on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can join this family, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!